So this is our early sown and germinated pulses and wheat trial we have here at Warnertown. As part of the Southern Pulse Agronomy project, we also have this trial replicated at Toology on the Eyre Peninsula with the faba bean, lentil and wheat combination. There's a faba bean, lentil, time of sowing combination at Farrell Flat in the mid-north and Woodner on the Eyre Peninsula as well, and also vetch and field pea at Udunda. Conventionally, like the sowing of pulses has been delayed due to the avoidance of things like increased disease pressure, flowering and potting during periods of high frost risk, lack of weed competition from staggered germination, and also the over-accumulation of biomass production, which can lead to early lodging, disease, shading and smothering, and also to avoid crop injury through herbicide residue carryover. However, the delaying of sowing can also have negative impacts, mainly brought back to yield just due to the lack of biomass accumulation, and also flowering and grain fill happening during periods of increased temperatures and also moisture stress. Traditionally, faba beans are sown a little bit earlier in medium rainfall zones, just due to their requirement for a longer growing season, whereas lentils can be sown a little bit later than other pulse crops. The aim of this trial was to development management strategies around the early sowing of pulses, and to also just look at their yield potential to that against that of wheat when it's sown at the same time. So the treatments we've put in place here at this site includes firstly 2 times of sowing, the first of which was on the 31st of March and the second was about a month later on the 5th of May. To actually get the trials up and going, germinated, we irrigated with about 20 millimetres of rainfall equivalent using a dripper irrigation system down the entire row. So I think like across the entire site, including this time of sowing and the other time of sowing, we used about 36,000 litres of water that we irrigated. So time of sowing 1 we irrigated immediately post sowing, and we also pre-irrigated before the second time of sowing a couple of days later to try and replicate just that one rainfall event. And the actual likelihood of that occurring during the season, you can look up on the Australian Climate website, and it analyses historical rainfall data dating back to the 1900s, and I think the likelihood of actually receiving an above 20 mil rainfall event over a 3-day period to be generous for this area during early April would only be about 15% of years. And for a 10 mil rainfall event, it'd be about 31% of years. So it's essentially doubling the possibility. During early May, this increases. The likelihood of a 20 mil rainfall event is around 21% of years, and 10 mil around 49%. So it definitely increases, which is what you would expect. But this year we actually received around 70 mil at the site over the month of April, with 13 of that falling between the 3rd to the 9th, so not that far behind the first time of sowing. So definitely got up and going very quickly, and also the air temperatures were around 17 degrees on average, so perfect conditions for good germination and establishment. In terms of the cultivar selection, we chose varieties that have a range of maturity quicknesses. So for the wheat, our slowest maturing variety is the Illabo, which is actually a mid-winter type, so it has that vernalisation requirement, or where it needs to be exposed to a period of cold temperatures for it to progress from a vegetative to a reproductive growth phase. Trojan wheat is a mid to fast spring variety that has a moderate photo period requirement, so it responds well to day length. So early time of sowing, you've got longer days, it's going to progress rather rapidly through its growth. And also scepter wheat as well, which pretty much depends just basically on temperature accumulation or growing degree days. So sow it early, it's going to progress through all of its reproductive phases rather quickly. I think taking a look at the moment, the first time sowing for the Scepter, that's in about dough development at the moment. Trojan is in grain fill, and I think Illabo is only just starting to head emergence, so it's got its vernalisation requirement, and now it's into its reproductive growth stages.
So people's concern with the early seeding would be frost. How many frost events did you record during flowering that week?
I've got...
I've gone through a few.
Yeah, we've had... there was a single event. I'll go through that in a bit. Yeah. Yeah, it hasn't been too severe. For the Faber beans...
I'll say it's our highest frost we've had in a long time.
Yeah, last for a decade this year.
Yeah. For the Faber beans, we have PBA Marn, which is an earlier sowing variety, which is more suited to lower rainfall environments and shorter season environments. Samira is later flaring, so it's more suited to high rainfall zones, later season environments. And also PBA Bendoc, which is pretty similar to Samira, but it has that any herbicide tolerance. The lentils differ more, like a little bit more slightly, with PBA Highland XT being an early flaring, early to mid maturity. Bolt, PBA Bolt, early to mid flaring, also early to mid maturity, and PBA Jumbo 2, which is a later type, is mid flaring to mid maturity. Throughout the course of the trial, we've taken a lot of phenological assessments, or Sarah has, when she's been up here pretty much on a weekly basis. She's looked at things like mainly dating, like date of emergence, flowering, canopy closure, podding, and also maturity. And we're assessing things like biomass at 50% flowering. And we'll also come and do some harvest index cuts to work out the proportion of grain to biomass. From our initial observations, the first time of sowing, you can see it has much more biomass production, pretty similar to Penny's intercropping. They're pretty tall and pretty bulky. For the flowering times of the different times of sowing and crop types, we found that from the first time of sowing, all the lentils and Faber beans were flowering from late May, early June, podding by mid-July. PBA Marn was about 2 weeks ahead of the other Faber bean varieties. For Scepter wheat, that was flowering by mid-July. Trojan by early August, while Illabo remained vegetative, but it's reproductive now. This also fell within that frost window. So we recorded a single frost event mid-June, 2 in early July, 3 in late July, and also 2 events this early August. I think it got down to about -1.5. So in terms of severity, the frost events probably this way aren't as severe as closer to Clare. I think we've got like -4s and 5s like on a repeated basis. So it'll be interesting to see how...
Do they have a length of time that they got to those levels?
I'll have to analyse the temperature data, have a bit of a quick look.
But the temperature, isn't it? The length of time.
Yeah, the length, yeah. Severity of the event, yeah. But yeah, it's not as severe as...
Frost had an impact on the early flowering, because I had a look on the 23rd of June, as your records showed they were flowering.
Yep.
And when I come back and had a look some 6 weeks later, you couldn't see any pods low down where I reckon those flowers would have been.
Yeah, so you probably see that with some of the beans and lentils. With the beans, they have quite a long flowering window, so if you do get a single frost event, it might drop some flowers, but it will continue to flower and produce pods later on. But with the wheat, like if you get a severe frost event during that critical period when it's at flowering, then it can completely wipe out. Yeah, it doesn't have any adaptation to that.